I want to take a nuanced view on this breaking news that has been unfolding all morning. So we just learned that Morning Joe's Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski recently visited Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago for a no cameras, no recording, casual, off-the-record visit. And when they came back, they effectively said that Trump changed his tune and he's now trying to unite people. I'll play the clip in just 1 second, but here's the thing. Trump is not doing any of that publicly. In fact, his public rhetoric has been so divisive and has been ramping up over the past few weeks. I mean, just last night at 4:03 a.m. on the dot, Trump quote tweeted Tom Fitton, who said, "Reports are incoming that Donald Trump's administration plans to declare a national emergency and will use military assets to reverse the Biden invasion through a mass deportation program." Trump tweeted out "true" at 4:03 a.m., so that doesn't line up with what Mika and Joe are saying. Trump is still going through with the mass deportations and even mobilizing the military to do so. Donald Trump is still making crazy appointments, trying to brute force Matt Gaetz into the position of the Attorney General. I mean, just this week, his team floated the idea of military tribunals for treason aimed at high-ranking generals. This isn't some fringe rumor. Trump actually said that, and it's an idea that could fundamentally destabilize trust in our military and cause a chilling effect towards any opposition of Trump's authority within the military. Let's not forget, this is the same Trump who 4 years ago incited a violent coup against our government, and the same Trump who 2 weeks ago said Democrats are the enemy from within. So there's a nuanced position to be taken here, you know? It's okay if you want to interview Trump. If I was offered an interview with Donald Trump, not only would I take it, but I would take that as an opportunity to push back, to expose his lies, to expose him as somebody who's demented and who thinks that the world around him is aimed at him. I think that there's a way you can maneuver around that, so I don't want to say that taking an interview with somebody as a journalist is bad. There's a way to do that. It's not inherently terrible, but this segment gives off very, very weird vibes because Joe and Mika's takeaway from the visit is that Trump is somehow a changed man and that we should all come together now. And the timing of this visit and their comments just couldn't be worse. You can't placate authoritarians just because they give you a little bit of access. Now again, it's not inherently bad for journalists to ever interact with Trump or to interview him. In fact, it can be quite responsible to confront him directly, which is what I would like to do, challenge his rhetoric and show the world who he really is, but that's not what this was. Let's watch this clip. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and we'll talk about this after.
Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
Okay, that part wasn't too offensive, but then they begin to imply that Trump has somehow changed his tune. Just listen closely.
Did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
Okay, there's another clip of them talking about it even further, but yeah, this is not going to cut it. Again, it's not inherently bad to talk to Trump. You can do it responsibly. You can push back. We saw examples of that on the campaign trail. Do you guys remember when that one journalist made him melt down at the Chicago Economic Forum because he was pushing back against tariffs? Yeah, that's not what this was. This wasn't some hard-hitting interview. It was just a behind-the-scenes discussion in disguise. I mean, it sends a dangerous message. If Trump gives you access and you flatter him a little, he'll grant you a seat at the table. It's a gross exchange, and frankly, it's beneath the standard of journalism that this moment in history demands. Mika and Joe should have gone there, and if they're going to get access, you push him on the record about the mass deportations. You don't say in one breath that he's still doing the mass deportations, and then say in the next breath he's looking for unity. Now take a listen to this next clip.
As somebody close to Donald Trump told me this past weekend, this is a president who's not seeking re-election, so maybe, just maybe, now could be the time for both parties to get to work. And I know, given the jarring headlines that we read every day, that may seem like a stretch, but think about this.
No, it's a stretch. It is absolutely a stretch. I mean, okay, again, I want to be nuanced here. The idea that both sides can come together and work is not a stretch. We saw that with the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I hope it happens over the next 4 years. But the idea that Donald Trump is going to act as some great unifier after spending the last 8 years, or honestly, the last 12 years saying that Barack Obama wasn't born in America, saying that Hillary Clinton needs to be locked up, smearing every Democrat, saying we're the enemy from within, that is not going to cut it. I want to quote former President Abraham Lincoln, who was actually a good president, even though Trump claims he was better than Lincoln, but Lincoln warned us about this in his famous Lyceum address. He said, and I quote, "At what point shall we expect the approach of danger? By what means shall we fortify against it? Shall we expect some transatlantic military giant to step the ocean and crush us at a blow? Never. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined, with all the treasure of the earth in their military chest, could not take by force a drink from the Ohio River or make a track on the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years. At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." And he wasn't talking about an outside threat. He was explicitly saying an outside threat could not harm us in 1,000 years. Before that ever happens, a danger would rise from within, when people exploit the very institutions that have existed since the inception of America and begin to bend these institutions to their will. That's exactly what Trump's doing, and he's using the same playbook that every authoritarian leader has used in history: eroding norms, silencing dissent, convincing others to normalize his actions, and when journalists like Joe and Mika give him credibility without pushing back publicly, it doesn't lead to unity, it leads to complicity. And again, I want to be nuanced. A lot of people are saying that Joe and Mika are now MAGA and they're bending the knee and that it's over, they're one of them now. No, we don't have to go completely purity testing. That is what lost us the election. All I'm doing here is simply pointing out the irresponsible journalism at play when you visit someone behind the scenes without actually pushing back publicly on what they told you. And I do want to say, if you want to support the independent journalism, the new media sphere that we're creating, you can become a member below. My content will always be free, but we're trying to level up this new media ecosystem every single day so that we can actually push back against Trump's lies effectively. So if you want to help level up the channel, make sure you become a member. But you know, what's so frustrating about this is that Joe and Mika know better. They've criticized Trump harshly in the past, but now they're playing right into his hands because Trump just values access. He gets access to them, they get access to him. For example, I mean, this is what Trump said about the meeting. Trump added that they, quote, congratulated me on running a great and flawless campaign, one for the history books, which I really believe it was. But it was also a campaign where I worked long and hard, perhaps longer and harder than any presidential candidate in history. Maybe they are kind of bending the knee. If they're coming there just to praise him, just to placate him, so they eventually get some sort of access, I don't like the vibe of that.
Of the 150 million votes cast, Donald Trump got 50%. Kamala Harris got about 49%. So I don't know. Seems to make sense for leaders of both parties to seek common ground, if it's possible at all.
Okay, he's not inherently wrong. It's just cringy the way he's saying it. I think everybody watching this video agrees that common ground is necessary in America, that both sides should work together to pass healthcare reform, that both sides should work together towards a better future, but that is not happening. One side in particular is eroding every single norm and then playing defense for the man who is leading it. One side in particular is egging on a national emergency, the new president declaring a national emergency to use military assets to reverse the, quote, Biden invasion through mass deportation programs. Only one side is calling the other the enemy from within. So yes, Morning Joe Scarborough, we all want both sides to work together. Biden has been saying that for years. Biden said before he even got into office, he's a president for all Americans. When Biden took office, he passed legislation that Republicans signed on to. Well, at least the normal Republicans, if that's not an oxymoron at this point. Some Republicans signed on to Biden's legislation because they realized it would actually benefit the country. There was the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So Biden is the one who's been trying to bring both sides together, but Republicans undermined him every step of the way. Could you imagine the Fox 5 or Fox News' 5 or Jesse Waters, whoever, then going to meet with Kamala after she wins? Would they go and meet with the Kamala administration and say, you know, we actually congratulated her on running a flawless campaign, and she's actually really looking to unite the country? No. If they did meet with her, they would make fun of her and they would spread rumors about her because that's who they are. And I'm not saying that that's what Morning Joe should do, but it's just the double standards at play with the mainstream media are insane. But you guys understand that. If you enjoy what I'm doing, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, have a great rest of your day, and hopefully I get the opportunity to challenge someone like Trump or JD Vance over the next 4 years. I mean, I would love to push back and actually debate them, actually challenge them, actually expose them, because that's what responsible journalism is supposed to look like. Thank you guys, and peace out.